Hello, everybody. It is everybody's, well, really the most controversial alternative person on the internet right now, TenTillDeath. Actually, I'm not on drugs, but that's just our little nickname. And yes, you have read the title right. And if you are a long time standing subscriber here and you read that title, you're probably like, 10, are you crazy? Are you really about to dabble in politics? 10! But if you saw my most recent live stream, I pretty much said on live, from here on out, we're about to get controversial. We're about to just let loose. You guys are going to be in for a wild ride on this channel. So join me as we get more serious about topics and discussions and ideas and creativities. And yes, you read the title right, and you're probably thinking, what do you mean by why did Gen Z vote more for Trump over Harris, and why did Gen Z, man? It's because they're sexist. And to tell you the truth, there is not one answer to this question. There are a multitude of answers. So I am going to be covering the answers that I know, and the things that I saw, and the stories that I've heard from young Gen Z men, because I am a young Gen Z man myself. Although people are, beg to differ, but at this point I'm just like, screw it. And this is not me, making a pro-Trump video or an anti-Trump video or pro-Biden or pro-whatever video. This is just me giving you, a very curious cat, answers as a Gen Z man. And you've probably come across other videos similar to this, so you've probably heard varying answers. Like I said, it's not one single answer. So let's start off. Why did Gen Z men turn out more for Trump and the Conservative Party over Kamala and the liberals and the Democrats? Because most people probably think, the whole old age, thing we all know of the younger generations are Democrats. The younger generations tend to be more liberal, which that's true. We all know that here in America. But, we saw something different this election. We saw something very different that shocked a lot of people. So, first answer that we're going to give of all the different answers. Inflation. And I know what you're probably thinking if you're a Biden supporter. You're probably like, what? Inflation is one of the reasons why these men voted for Trump. Biden. No. I know. I'm very aware. I'm very knowledgeable on, the Inflation Reduction Act and the things that Joe Biden did to try to combat inflation. I'm very knowledgeable on that. Not everybody is. But you got to look at it from a different perspective. So, I will say this. Inflation, for a lot of people in this country, it did not help them. Oh, and this is the early COVID years. And for some people, inflation was the greatest thing. Some people, their wealth hit all-time highs. Their house value hit all-time highs. Some people were like, woo, inflation's the best thing ever for me. And unfortunately, over here in Tennessee, it was not. And so I'm going to show you this perspective. Tennessee had a lot of economic growth in, the COVID years, because a lot of people moved over to Tennessee, which in turn created a lot more businesses. Even though we had all these new people move in, the reason why we had all these new people move in is because Tennessee was a very cheap state to live in and a very affordable state to live in while inflation was going on. So for a lot of people, they're like, okay, we can't afford to live in California anymore. Let's move to Tennessee. We'll save more money in the long run. But unfortunately, if the money we make in Tennessee is different than the money someone makes in California, right? So if you were someone like me in Tennessee, you literally saw your grocery bill go up every month, which that's not an exaggeration. In the year 2022, especially the summer of 2022, it was really bad. It was really bad for a lot of us. Not only just that, in Tennessee, a lot of companies kept upping our bills, like our phone bills, our electricity bills, and they argued, well, inflation. Inflation's why we gotta, increase these bills on you Tennesseans. And the worst part about it was a lot of jobs for a while here in Tennessee refused to up their wage to compensate for inflation. And so you had a lot of Gen Z men who they were starting to struggle to afford their bills, and they were trying to wonder where their next meal was going to come from. And they looked at who was in office, who was the leader of America at that time that's supposed to lead us out of the COVID years and inflation. And they saw Joe Biden, and they saw the Democrats, right? And because, inflation just kept going up and inflation kept getting worse, for a lot of Americans during that time, especially a lot of Tennesseans and Gen Z men. They were like, screw this president. This president is not helping me clearly. Things are just getting worse. I cannot believe the Democrats have let us down again. Why should I vote for them in the next election? Now, you're someone like me, you're very knowledgeable about the things Joe Biden did try to do. Credit where credit's due, he tried his best, man. He could have tried other things, but I'm not a president, so I can't dabble too much into that. So that's reason number one. Reason number two. This is a very important one. Some of you guys know about this one. Some of you guys have probably heard this in some sort of capacity or some, phrase or some usage of words. But it all sounds very similar with how I'm about to say this. But the left has gone too far left, or the liberals or the Democrats have become too identity politic based, or have become too crazy. And so, good example of this, right? And I saw this online, and I saw this in real life. So, you had a lot of young Gen Z men. A lot of young Gen Z men are very liberal and have very liberal beliefs, believe it or not, despite how they voted. And a lot of young Gen Z men are actually very pro-abortion, despite how they voted. But this is the big issue with the Democratic Party and the liberals in the year 2025. And a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about. You can have, good example, pro-abortion, right? But I also believe, hey man, right to bear arms. Whoa. Stop, Ten. Stop. Right to bear arms. You're the reason why school shootings happen, Ten. Blood is on your hands, Ten, because you right to bear arms. But I just said I'm pro-abortion. Murderer, Ten, murderer. And that was probably, I know that's a little bit of a stupid comedic exaggeration, but that's one of the big things that that really made a lot of young Gen Z men feel dissuaded and disillusioned from the liberals and the Democratic Party. There's a lot of young Gen Z men that do have very liberal beliefs, but they also have more conservative beliefs. And unfortunately, and even Bernie Sanders kind of talked about this, the Democrats, and especially online on the internet, so I would just stay away from the internet during election season. It gets toxic. A lot of the Democrats and online liberals made it seem like you're not allowed to have one conservative belief. All your beliefs have to be liberal leaning, or you're a traitor, or you're not a true liberal, or you're responsible for school shootings, or you're homophobic, or you're transphobic, or you're whatever, or you're racist. And could you imagine just having a ton of online people say that you're responsible for school shootings just because you're, pro right to bear arms, even though all your other beliefs are liberal leaning? Just this one belief, has kind of made you look like a laughingstock in the liberal party. And that's where the liberals failed a lot of young Gen Z men like me during this last election. Like, I have a lot of liberal beliefs, but the issue is the liberals just don't like me, right? And it's not even just that, which is so weird. The liberals are supposed to be the people that are very open and accepting. That's what most people know them as, right? The issue is that a lot of conservatives were more open and accepting of us, middle ground guys, us people that had beliefs from both sides. The conservatives were more accepting of people like me than the liberals. And that's a problem, because the liberals, they're very pro-us. And I like the fact that the liberals are very pro-us, very pro, hey man, you deserve a life, Ten. You deserve, a right to fair and freedom and all sorts of stuff. I like that liberal belief. I love that from my Democratic brothers. But unfortunately, the Democratic brothers could not accept people like me. They didn't like people like me that held beliefs from both sides. And so a lot of young Gen Z men like me were just kind of like laughed at by a lot of liberals. And it's not even just this. I've seen this. You can't, and it's like I said before, It's crazy when the conservatives are more accepting towards people like me, than the Democrats. Like, what are we doing, man? Like, what are we doing? Like, we're letting these people down. We're supposed to be the accepting party. What are we doing? The conservatives are becoming more accepting than us, damn it, and they're transphobic. Damn it. Whatever, right? Lost my train of thought there. Yeah, good example. Like, in my workplace, there was, I was able to, good example of what I'm saying here. In my workplace, we would talk about politics and stuff. And we would talk about Trump, and we would all talk about, what we agreed with and disagreed with. I live in a very conservative area. A lot of the conservatives actually agreed with me on some of the criticisms of Trump. They were all like, yeah, this guy is an asshole. They all agreed with me on that. We all agreed that the man's is pretty fucking rude, man. And they didn't bash me for it. They were like, Tin, it's okay that you think that. We're not going to bash you. We all think that here at the Republican Party, but we admire, that strength, that courage that he has to speak his mind. And the issue with a lot of the liberals and a lot of the Democrats is that you could not criticize Kamala in any sense without being called a sexist or a racist or just a misogynist, man. And that's the thing, like, every political leader, regardless of sex, regardless of race, regardless of class, deserves to be criticized. Like, every political leader. But now we're gatekeeping because it's a female president. Like, that seems sexist in and of itself, because you're basically saying, hey, this woman is not equal enough to be criticized. That shit sounds sexist. It's not about the fact she's a woman. It was more so about the fact that, there was a lot of things that people just criticize about the candidate. It's just like Trump, man. Everybody criticizes him. But when you gatekeep and you as a party say, oh man, you're criticizing Kamala, blah, attack, you're a sexist, made a lot of Gen Z men feel disillusioned, dissuaded, right? Third reason, I think this will be the last reason I give. So, third reason is essentially this. You look at both political leaders that at that time. You had Joe Biden drop out, right? That was a shock for a lot of people. That was a shock for me. I thought he was gonna stick it out. And some people like me were actually like, dude, did the Democrats really kind of just betray Joe? Like, I actually kind of felt bad for him. And then hearing about some of the things that happened behind the scenes, I was like, damn, man, I actually kind of feel bad for Joe. I don't hate the guy. I think he's a pretty cool guy. Like, I don't personally hate him. But, like, I was just like, damn, man. They're like, they did this to their own mans. And so, this is the third big reason. So, things just did not add up. Stories did not add up. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I paid attention very closely during the 2024 election season. And what I did is to make sure that, I wasn't being biased in my understanding of both candidates. If CNN ran a news report about Kamala, I would look at the Fox equivalent, because of course CNN's liberal leaning, so they're gonna, boast about Kamala and they're gonna leave out all the negative things. And of course Fox is gonna, bring in all the negative things and try to spin the story a different way. And it's the same with Fox and Trump, Fox dick sucks Trump, right? We all know that. Well, let's not sugarcoat it, whatever. And CNN does not fuck with Trump, right? I think it's different now. I heard CNN was changing their tune a bit. I don't know if that's so true. But, one's a liberal media outlet, one's a conservative media outlet. So anytime there was a conservative news outlet that reported something about Kamala, I would look at the liberal media outlet to see what they said about the same thing. And the same for Trump. So, I got to get a slice of both sides. And I watched the DNC, I watched RNC, I watched all the interviews. I really paid attention to Kamala as a candidate. And this is where I say things did not add up for a lot of Gen Z men. You know, everybody already knew going into this, Trump is a crazy motherfucker. Everyone knew that shit. It didn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. The Republicans know. There's a lot of Democrats out there that think that the Republicans don't know. The Republicans know he is a crazy motherfucker. Everyone knows, right? But, hold up. Leading up to that election, you know, you had people starving. You had people wondering how they were going to afford houses in this country. People were wondering, how are we going to afford to live, right? And things just did not add up. Everybody, you know, Trump, his spokesman, J.D. Vance, was telling everything Trump was going to do. Everybody, you know, everyone was like, all right, we know what Trump's going to do to try to get us out of this mess. Then we have Kamala. Credit where credit's due. She had... I like the stories she shares about her family. Her the stories that she talks about with her family, very heartwarming. But with Kamala, what I noticed is she would backtrack on things. She would say one thing. One moment she would say, oh, the economy has never been so good under Biden and Bidenomics and us Democrats. Then next interview, or next time she was on air, yeah, the economy's crap. We're going to try to fix it for America. Woo. And so a lot of Gen Z people, they were looked at just her flip-flopping back and forth on these interviews and about, you know, what she was going to do. And people were like, huh? It wasn't even just that. The 60-minute interview was arguably one of the worst interviews you could have done as a candidate. So when a lot of, you know, young Gen Z men that might have voted for her saw that 60-minute interview, they were like, man, I cannot back up someone like this that's not giving straight answers. It's not to say she didn't give straight answers on everything. There was things, you know, that she gave answers on. But when you are supposed to be the leader of the country, the next leader of the country, and you are trying to convince people why they should vote for you, you flip-flopping back and forth and then not giving straight answers on topics and on questions your voters or potential voters might have for you, it makes a lot of people disillusioned on if they even actually want to vote for you. And good example, right? If you've been following politics since 2016, all you heard from since 2016, now in the year 2025, almost 10 years later, is we gotta stop Trump, we gotta stop Trump, we gotta stop Trump, we gotta stop Trump, we gotta stop Trump. Just gotta stop. You've been hearing it since Trump went against Hillary. You've been hearing it since Trump went against Joe. Then you had to hear it again when Trump went against Kamala. And a lot of people started to get annoyed by that. And you're going to see how this ties into this third point here. A lot of times when, you know, they might have asked her questions about the economy or something like that, she would say, this is how we're going to fix it, by beating Trump. That voters aren't looking for a bullshit answer. Voters want to know an actual answer, an answer that might say, you know, this might work. This might work if we do it this way, Kamala. And I'll give credit where credit's due. I did agree with her policies on the housing market, what she was going to do to change the housing market. I really agreed with that over, you know, Trump's and Vance's thing they were going to do. But when you just go, oh, we are going to beat Trump, that's how we're going to save the economy. But then you just said in this other interview, the economy is great. Under Bidenomics, things are going good. Voters are confused. Voters are like, what is this? What is this person who is supposed to be the next leader of our country doing? What are they saying? But you just said it's good, now you're saying it's bad? What? What do you mean that we're going to fix it if we beat Trump? That's not an answer. That's just saying you're going to beat Trump and things are going to fix? No, people want answers. Americans wanted solution. Americans were already done with all the bullshit, and especially a lot of Gen Z men. A lot of Gen Z men just wanted to know, how am I going to eat tomorrow? What are you, Kamala Harris, going to do for me, a Gen Z man, so I can be able to afford a house in the future? That's all Gen Z men wanted to know. Answers. And that's where, you know, she failed. Right? And that it's sad. It's sad. You know, I thought there was some good potential to her. You know, there was things I agreed with her on. But people just wanted an answer, and people were like, you know, fuck it, man. If we have to vote for crazy McRazy, Donald Trump will vote for him again. And so people, just decided to go with him. People already knew how crazy Trump could be from the get-go. People already knew all these years. People are like, better than nothing, right? And so you can't, as a politician, you can't just go back and forth on your answers when people are looking for solutions. You just got to be straight up and honest with the American people. You can't just hit them with the, we are going to win! Motivation only goes so far, and the American people were hungry, damn it. We were hungry, damn it. And those are just three reasons why a lot of Gen Z men decided to vote for Trump over Kamala. These are just 3 reasons. There's a lot more reasons. You can watch other videos from other YouTubers who have talked about this, but like I said, these are just 3 reasons that I gave from the things I saw, from the stories I heard. And I know it's a controversial video, but that's just how it is. And I will say this, good example, Bernie is right. The Democratic Party has got too out of hand, and this is my personal opinion. I've noticed, especially a lot of the millennial conservatives, believe it or not, and this is a good phrase I heard. Someone once said, I'm still a Democrat, it's just the Democrats left me and think I'm a conservative. Like, a good example, with my political beliefs, I would be considered a Democrat in the year 2008. In the year 2008, with my current beliefs, I would be considered a Democrat. Unfortunately, because of changing times, which times change, society advances, whatever, with the current Democratic Party, I would probably be considered a Republican just because of one view. And it's like, I'm not a Republican. But unfortunately, the Democratic Party has kind of gone too far left for a lot of people. And what I've found is that a lot of millennials, not Gen Z, a lot of millennials that are conservative are actually very democratic. A lot of them hold the belief of screw the government, just like the liberals. A lot of those conservative millennials hold the belief of, your life, don't control me, this is my stuff, don't try to, screw me, type of stuff, just like the liberals, believe. It's just a lot of the conservative millennials and a lot of young Gen Z men, they just feel like they've been let down by the Democrats and the liberals of America. And I'm willing to bet you, especially with what Bernie was saying, that, the Democrats just decided to play identity politics and not actually listen to what Americans wanted. I'm willing to bet you, if the Democratic Party got their shit together, a lot of people would be turning back to the Democratic Party. It's just too disillusioned right now. Too damn disillusioned right now. Like, they don't even like me, man. Like, they don't even like me. And I love them regardless if they like me. I love my conservative brothers regardless of if they like me or not, man. Because I just love people. I just love human beings. We're all a human being, regardless if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever, man. Whatever. I love you regardless, whoever the frick is watching. Even if you don't agree with these reasons on why Gen Z men decided to turn the other way, let me know in the comments. What do you think? Have you heard any of these reasons before? Drop your comments below. Until next time, peace. And yes, controversial video. Fuck it. Let's go. Next controversial video.